Venezuela's Minister of Communication reveals evidence of opposition corruption and extensive planning for the failed coup attempt. And Saudi Arabia's role in the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi remains under heavy United Nations scrutiny. Guyana's Electoral Commission chairman has stepped down a week after the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled he held the post unconstitutionally. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Doris Polo, and this is From the South. Venezuela's Minister of Communication held a news conference in which he revealed new evidence in the case against the opposition and its web of corruption and extensive coup plotting. The minister said that the Venezuelan government possesses more than 56 hours of video and audio recordings of the various actions which were planned as part of the coup attempt. Government intelligence bodies were present at numerous coup planning meetings. Rodriguez named Colombian President Ivan Duque as a coup promoter and said that plots had clear foreign support. This included planned assassination attempts targeting President Nicolas Maduro, Diosdado Cabello, and Freddy Bernal.
We have the operation orders made by these terrorist groups, which had 3 combat groups: Combat Group Sucre, Combat Group Landa, and Combat Group Ulysses. Combat Group Sucre would pursue the capture and assassination of President Nicolas Maduro, the capture and the assassination of the President of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, the capture and assassination of the authority responsible for the state of Táchira, Freddy Bernal, and the taking of the Miraflores Palace. The group denominated as Ulysses were responsible for the capture of the Chief General González López, who was the director of SEBIN, and to provide security to Landa. Later we see that while there is a group called Landa, Landa is also a pseudonym utilized by Mr. Juan Guaidó. Another group named Landa aimed to take the headquarters of the Directorate General of Military Counterintelligence and to act against the affairs of Petare, and to capture the Interior Minister of Popular Power, Néstor Reverol. They would take the Ayala Battalion Park, rob the Bolivar Battalion, take the Carlota military base, overthrow Juan Guaidó, and Baduel was going to self-proclaim himself president of Venezuela from the headquarters of VTV, and from there, he would lead that movement. That's to say that of the 40 candidates for president that the opposition has, according to the infiltrated audios by Mike Pompeo, we have already identified 4: Guaidó, Baduel, Leopoldo López, and Maria Machado. We're missing the other 36, but over the course of the day, we're going to go identifying them one by one. Maybe they're more than 40, Mr. Pompeo.
The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime says Colombia is responsible for 70% of the world's cocaine production. The head of research for the UN office, Angela May, made the announcement as she presented the organization's latest report. She said that although drug seizures in Colombia had increased by 74% in the last decade, production had increased by an alarming 50% between 2008 and 2017. The UN official blamed the spread of criminal gangs in many parts of Colombia as one of the causes. Our correspondent in Bogota, Paola Fernandez, has more.
Alarming figures have been reported by the United Nations in Vienna on drug production in the world. And they are particularly alarming for Colombia because according to their report, it produces 70% of all cocaine, which is distributed across the globe. They say Colombian production has increased sharply in the 10 years from 2008 to reach a total figure of 1.977 tons of cocaine. Obviously, this figure represents a very large number of deaths among drug users. And this comes as the Colombian government says it will restart the the spraying of glyphosate, something which has been condemned by many social movements, especially campesino and indigenous organizations. We should remember that the peace agreements with the FARC proposed the substitution of illicit crops, but this hasn't happened. Instead, there has been forced eradication and the militarization of those areas, resulting in an increase in violence, often by criminal gangs fighting over control of the drug routes. Communities have been denouncing this, and they say this is a general problem for the whole economy. But the most badly affected are the coca growers who have no alternative but to plant these crops, while those who make money from the drug business enjoy total impunity.
That was Paola Fernandez with that report. A Brazilian Air Force officer who was part of President Jair Bolsonaro's committee traveling to the G20 meeting has been caught with 39 kilos of cocaine. Spanish police arrested the man during a stopover in Seville as the delegation headed to Japan for the G20. Bolsonaro, who was on a separate flight via Portugal, said he would instruct his officials to cooperate with the Spanish investigation. The drugs were reportedly in the officer's hand baggage, and he will be charged with drug trafficking. Protests as well as violent police repression are continuing in Honduras. Late on Tuesday, the security forces fired at student protesters close to the National University. After several students were shot on Monday, social movements marched to the offices of the UN Commission for Human Rights to condemn the action of the police. They are also demanding the immediate resignation of President Juan Orlando Hernandez.
Teachers, doctors and students have once again taken to the streets of Tegucigalpa, Honduras, against the militarization ordered by the President Juan Orlando Hernandez.
For 10 years, there has been repression and death ordered by the usurper, President Juan Orlando Hernandez, against the people and against demonstrations. These current protests have been ongoing for over a month, and many of our young people are being killed as a result.
At first, the protesters mobilized against the privatization of the health and education sectors. Now, other social sectors have joined the mobilizations and are demanding the resignation of the current president.
People are leaving the country because there are no jobs, no food, and no life expectancy.
The fact that military police stormed the National University and shot live rounds of ammunition, injuring 4 protesters on Tuesday, has caused great indignation. Standing in solidarity with these college students, protesters from other educational institutions have mobilized and have been repressed.
These criminals are partaking in organized crime. They are stealing Honduras' democratic right and institutionality. These criminals are the ones who are murdering college students that are against this corrupt regime.
In an interview with a local news outlet, the president blamed his opposers for this situation as he justified the actions of the armed forces.
It's a group of radicals that have had the university on its knees for more than 10 years. A group of violent, masked men. If I am protesting, why would I hide my face if this is what I believe in?
Despite the justifications, those who've been protesting for almost 2 months have assured that they will continue rejecting the government's neoliberal policies that has privatized most services in the country, where 68.5% of the population lives in poverty, according to the calculations by international organizations.
Our correspondent Gilda Silva Strucy is on the ground in Honduras.
In the interior, in the department of Comayagua, to be exact, intense military operations are continuing, with military police arriving to restrict the freedom of expression of protesters gathered here who are demanding the right to health and education. The government of Juan Orlando Hernandez is ensuring that the repression continues, with government forces shooting not only at adults, but also at children at different schools across the country. This is the situation here in one of the busiest routes heading to the north of the country, which is where the police and military are coming from.
Coming up after the break, Guyana's Electoral Commission chairman has stepped down a week after the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled his position unconstitutional. Stay with us. Welcome back. Guyana's Elections Commission chairman has stepped down and handed in his resignation from the position which the Caribbean Court of Justice found he was holding unconstitutionally. Less than 2 years after he was sworn in, retired Justice James Patterson vacated the position amid mounting public pressure to accept the court's ruling. The CCJ had determined that the process to appoint Patterson was fatally flawed. The president had failed to offer a specific reason for refusing to appoint a chairman from the list submitted by the opposition leader. The court recommended that in future, the opposition and president discuss eligible candidates before a final list is submitted. The UK government's latest travel advisory now reflects a decreased threat of a terrorist attack in Trinidad and Tobago. In the updated information and advice to potential travellers, the UK has removed the phrase "very likely" when it refers to the prospect of a terrorism attack taking place in the Caribbean nation.
I'm also happy to tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago that just yesterday, the UK travel advisory upgraded Trinidad and Tobago and took us off the very likely of terrorist attacks and told us it is because of all of the work that we've done in close proximity with them and the cooperation. So well done, Trinidad and Tobago.
West Indies cricket icon Brian Lara has been discharged from a hospital in India a day after he was admitted with chest pains. Reports state that the 50-year-old from Trinidad and Tobago has been declared fit and fine. Lara, who holds several world records, is considered one of the greatest cricketing batsmen in the world. He has the highest individual score in both first-class cricket and test cricket. Lara is in India as a sport analyst for the official broadcasters of the ongoing Cricket World Cup. Lesotho's foreign minister is defending China, saying the country is providing more debt relief than creating a so-called debt trap. Lesego Magoti says most projects that appear to be loans are easy to be repaid and managed. The West has repeatedly accused Beijing of creating debt traps by giving developing countries loans they struggle to repay, which could then lead to a seizure of assets.
That is very unfortunate to make such a demeaning statement of saying that China is putting African countries into a debt trap. I don't recall China going to Africa, forcing African countries to actually take loans in China. Every country makes its own evaluation, and after evaluating the capability, and they put the projects under the FOCAC, and that's where they get approved.
South Africa's second largest opposition party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, on Tuesday walked out of Parliament in protest against the presence of Minister of State Enterprises Pravin Gordhan. EFF parliamentarians, led by their leader Julius Malema, said they were not prepared to listen to Gordhan, who, according to them, is a constitutional delinquent. A recent report by a state investigative agency accused Gordhan of acting improperly during his time as finance minister for allowing the payment of early retirement benefits to a former senior government official. Palestinians have held more protests in the occupied territories against the U.S. Economic Conference in Bahrain. Thousands marched through the Khan Yunis refugee camp in Gaza, chanting the deal of the century should collapse. The protesters say the economic plan unveiled in Bahrain is an attempt to buy off the Palestinians.
These millions and billions are to attract the Palestinians. The United States and Israel divided the Arab nation, and they stole the wealth of the Arab countries. This conference is to raise all the Arab-Israeli deals and make Israel the good country with a beautiful face in the Middle East.
I want to tell those meetings in Mount Rai to stay away from our cause. Do not trade with our cause. Palestine is for us. No one can trade with our cause. There is an international decision number 194 that we should return. They won't solve our problem by giving us money.
We reject the deal of the century. We will not give away anything of the land of Palestine, all of Palestine. We will not give Jerusalem away. and we will not resettle, and we will not accept an alternative homeland. We will not accept expansion projects that are in the dreams and in the imagination of some people, such as expanding Gaza to Sinai and expanding the West Bank to Jordan, or Jordan to be in control of the West Bank, or Egypt to be in control of Gaza. Palestine is only Palestine.
Palestinian leaders have given a cautious welcome to the announcement by Oman that it would open an embassy in the Palestinian territories. However, Hanan Ashrawi of the PLO warned Oman not to give official recognition to Israel.
Well, we think maybe it will help as, first of all, educating the Omani government as to the real nature of the occupation, and also working with Palestine directly. We told many Arab countries we don't need to go to Manama, to Bahrain, in order to help the Palestinian people with their projects and plans and programs. You can do it directly.
Our correspondent Lara Tardo has more on the decision of Oman and the Economic Forum in Bahrain.
This Wednesday, the Sultan of Oman announced his intention to open an embassy in Ramallah, thereby becoming the first Gulf country to open a diplomatic mission in this occupied Palestinian territory. Although Oman is not taking part in the Economic Forum organized by the United States held in Bahrain, this announcement comes on the second day of that conference, which has provoked anger among Palestinians. The Foreign Ministry of Oman says it will send a delegation to Ramallah to prepare for the opening of its embassy there, which it says is a continuation of Oman's support for the Palestinian people. This Wednesday is the last day of the Bahrain Forum, where the United States has unveiled the economic part of its so-called deal of the century, a supposed peace plan for the Middle East which denies the basic rights of the Palestinians, including the right of return and a possible two-state solution.
After the break, Saudi Arabia remains under fire over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Don't go away. Welcome back. A United Nations expert says Saudi Arabia's investigation into the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi has failed to examine who may have ordered the killing. Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions, Agnes Kalamard, says there is credible evidence to warrant further investigation into Saudi officials' individual liability, including that of the Crown Prince. In her report issued this month, Kalamard called for an international criminal investigation and urged states to widen sanctions to include the Crown Prince and his assets abroad, unless he can prove no responsibility.
The investigation carried out by the Saudi authorities has failed to address the chain of command. It is not only a question of who ordered the killing. Criminal responsibility can be derived from direct or indirect incitement or from the failure to prevent and protect. Establishment of a UN criminal investigation is as essential in order for those central questions to be addressed. State responsibility begs the question as to whom is ultimately liable for his killing. The inquiry was a human rights inquiry, not a criminal investigation. It has nevertheless found credible evidence warranting further investigation of high-level Saudi officials' individual liability, including that of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and of his key advisor, Saud al-Qahtani.
The German migrant rescue Seawatch ship has entered Italian waters with 42 migrants on board, defying the right-wing government in Rome. The ship's captain decided to head to the island of Lampedusa because the situation on board was more desperate than ever. Seawatch is an NGO rescuing migrants as they make the precarious journey from North Africa to Europe across the Mediterranean Sea. NGOs operating in the region are impeded by increasingly reactionary European Union policies designed to prevent migrants entering EU territory. And the Seawatch captain, who has defied the port blockade, says she hopes the migrants stranded on board her ship will be able to disembark in Italy. She made the appeal in a video posted to the NGO's Twitter account.
The Italian authorities have just come on board the Sea-Watch 3. We are stopped outside the harbor of Lampedusa. They have checked our ship certificates and the passport of the crew. And now they are waiting for further instructions from their superiors. I really hope they will take the rescuees off the ship soon.
The U.S. Senate has passed a $4.6 billion emergency border aid bill to support migrants arriving through Mexico. This after rejecting a House version of the bill that would impose greater restrictions on migrant detention centers. The House and Senate must now reconcile the two bills or find an alternative solution before Congress leaves for its July 4th recess. Senate Republicans plan to force House Democrats to accept their bill or get nothing done. The Department of Health and Human Services has warned that it could run out of funding to house migrant children by the end of the month.
This situation is child abuse. It is an atrocity that violates every value we have, not only as Americans, but as moral beings. Today, sadly, our values are being undermined by the President's failed policies, which has intensified the situation of heartbreak and horror on the border, which challenges the conscience of America. This legislation is a vote. Today, our legislation is a vote against the cruel attitude toward children of this administration.
Meanwhile, the acting head of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, John Sanders, has resigned following the growing public outcry over unsanitary detention conditions of migrant children in Texas. Sanders did not say if he was resigning over the handling of migrant children, but he quit his post just after 2 months. A heartbreaking image of a man and his 2-year-old daughter who died while trying to cross Mexico's Rio Grande is a vivid reminder of the great risks migrants take in the hope of securing a bright future. We warn you that the image you are about to see may be distressing. It's an unspeakable tragedy. The lifeless bodies of a 25-year-old Salvadorian father, Oscar Martinez Ramirez, and his young daughter found floating face down in the Rio Grande. The father had carried the little girl, almost 2 years old, on his back, stowing her inside his T-shirt to keep her safe as they attempted to cross the river, but the pair was swept away by violent currents. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.